All right. So we are on with Senator Nathan Dahm and state senator who is looking to be a US senator. And always my first question for somebody running for office, and we've talked before. You know how I am. My first question is why? Are you nuts? Why would you want to be a US senator?
Well, I'll be honest. This is something that I've always felt that I am called to do. Not necessarily I'm saying to be a U.S. senator, but to be involved in government. Ever since I was young, I was always very, very interested in that. In fact, when I was even 12, 13, I was reading the Constitution, the Declaration, even the Articles of Confederation, which not very many people have read. And so it's something that I've always felt like that's what I'm called to do. That's where I'm supposed to be, is serving people in the governmental realm. So specifically regarding the US Senate race, it is something that my wife and I prayed about, and it is what like the direction we feel we're supposed to go for that. But ultimately, I don't believe that DC is the answer. I believe DC is the problem. We have far too many issues being forced upon us from DC. So my goal is to get to DC to put them back in that constitutional lockbox and keep them out of the affairs of the people of Oklahoma as much as possible.
So I was discussing your campaign website with a colleague, and he said, I think I see Trump's name on there 20 times, and I see Nathan's name on there like twice. Are you running as Donald Trump? Because it seems like that is the message. I'm all about Donald Trump.
Well, if you look at it, I have a record that I've ran on, that I have proven myself in the state legislature. I've been in there for 9 years. I've been ranked the most conservative legislator during my time up there consistently. So I do have that record to run on. But I also understand that a lot of people appreciate what Donald Trump did. President Trump was a fighter, just as I've been. And so he's stood up for the people. He's said the things that many of us wish other people were saying, many of the things that I had been saying for years. So yes, I am a huge supporter of President Trump. I don't shy away from that. Appreciate the things that he did in leading our country. And I'm going to carry on a lot of those same America First policies that he did when I get to Washington, D.C., just as I've done here in Oklahoma.
So the voters, I guess, are going to wonder, well, what are you going to do for Oklahoma? I mean, it's nice to protect the Constitution and try to, deal with national issues and national politics and stuff. But what are you going to do for our state?
Well, I've already done several things being in the state legislature. If you want to talk about protecting our individual liberties, I haven't just protected our liberties, I've actually advanced them. I've passed several Second Amendment bills that actually expanded our rights here in Oklahoma, including constitutional carry. I also passed the nation's first ever anti-red flag law, which would stop these unconstitutional gun grabs from taking place here in the state of Oklahoma. So there's things like that that not only will I stop the government from infringing upon our rights, I've actually advanced our rights. So I'm going to always continue to focus on protecting individual rights because as much as I am a strong constitutionalist, I also do understand the Declaration of Independence. And when it talks about our rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it says that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. So that is the main core function of government always, is first and foremost to protect our rights. But then, yes, outside of that, there's many things that can be done for the people of Oklahoma, for the state of Oklahoma, that I'm always going to continue to work on.
As a U.S. senator. So give me a couple examples.
Well, one of the main things is we have to get our debt under control. We cannot continue to spend ourselves into oblivion. It's immoral to be doing this to future generations, to be putting them so much into debt. And so we have to get the out of control spending under control. In the state legislature, I voted against the Republican-led growth of government and these large budgets. I voted against the Republican-led tax increases. We need to lower taxes and cut spending. We absolutely can do that without causing any harm to the people of Oklahoma or to the state or to the nation. We're causing more harm by having these debt ceiling increases, these continuing resolutions, these unconstitutional measures. That's one of the biggest affronts that we are facing right now, is the out of control spending. I know it's not sexy, to talk about spending, because nobody likes talking about the numbers, but that is the thing that is hanging over our head right now.
Math. Nobody likes math. I'm a don't like math person. All right. So, but during the Trump administration, as you well know, he racked up about $8 trillion in debt. more than, I don't know. I'm not going to go into the, who was the worst or whatever, but he certainly did that. So there apparently are some areas where you maybe differ from Mr. Trump's policy. Is that fair to say?
Yes, nobody agrees with anyone 100%, obviously, and I've been consistent on my concern on the out of control spending, and but I would say I won't just lay that at his feet, because it was a Republican-led Congress that was pushing for that and advocating for that. Just like, if you want to use an example here in Oklahoma, when Governor Stitt first came in, and we actually had extra revenues coming in, it was the Republican legislature that was pushing to try to spend every dime, and it was Governor Stitt who was advocating to actually put some of that money into savings. So it's not just the executive; they aren't actually the one that ultimately passes the budget. It's actually Congress that is responsible for that. So no, I don't put that blame solely on him. Yes, he did sign those bills. Yes, he was involved in spending that money, but it was actually Congress that led the majority of the charge on that, because the House is the one that has the purse strings ultimately, but it's the entire Congress, including the Senate, that has to pass those budget bills or continuing resolutions. So I put more blame on them, because they've been on this reckless spending streak for decades. One example that people often use is they will spend money like a drunken sailor. Well, the thing that I've heard about sailors is that they actually stop when they run out of money. Congress doesn't seem to be able to do that.
And not when they can print their own, right? So, and as you mentioned, that was a Republican-led Congress, and now they've got this whole big budget battle going now. And I don't go down that rabbit hole too much, but are you thinking the Democrats are saying, well, we can pay for all this by doing some tax raises. We're not going to actually raise the debt. Are you buying it?
No, and here's the thing. I mean, they don't need to raise taxes. I remember early on, when I first started getting involved more in campaigns and elections, when I had first moved back to America, one of the candidates on the debate stage in the Republican primary election, I think it was in 2008, it might have been in 12, had said that if they entirely eliminated the income tax, they could go and went back to year 2000 government spending, they would be no worse off than they were right now. And so now that's 20 years ago, but it still holds true that the amount of revenue that they're bringing in for taxes does not compare to how much they are spending, because they're just borrowing and putting us into debt. So raising taxes is not the solution. We could lower taxes, and we should lower taxes. And that's one thing that President Trump actually did advocate for. Yes, Congress passed it, but he was pushing for that. So we need to lower taxes, but ultimately it comes down to the spending. If they were to actually cut spending, and most of what they spend money on in Washington, D.C. is unconstitutional, they don't even have the authority to be doing it. But if we actually cut spending, they wouldn't even have to be talking about raising taxes.
So what kind of spending? Give me an example of unconstitutional spending that you're talking about. Like what?
The U.S. Department of Education should not exist. It should be eliminated entirely. We often hear at the state level, being a state legislator, that the schools, teachers, educators, school boards don't like unfunded mandates from the state government level, but we don't hear that at the federal level. And the vast majority, even up to 90% of the mandates and regulations, come from the federal government, and on average, only around 10% of the money actually comes from the feds. So we see all these regulations, all these requirements from them, but they have absolutely no constitutional authority to be involved in education in any way. I believe the people of Oklahoma, especially the parents, know better how to educate than any government bureaucrat in DC. So we can entirely eliminate that agency. There's other agencies that could be eliminated as well. But also Senator Rand Paul has for years talked about the penny plan. If they just cut 1% of funding across the board from all agencies, they would have been able to balance the budget within a decade. Now they've grown so much, I think it has to be like a 3-penny plan where they'd have to do like 3 cents or something. But it would be very easy to, I don't want to say easy, it would be possible with minimal cuts, like just a 1 to 3% cut, to quickly balance the budget if there was the political will to do it in DC.
So you face a potential educator as an opponent if you were to win the Republican nomination for US Senate. Nope. I'm sorry. I'm getting my races confused. Never mind. I was sitting here thinking about Joy Hoffmeister, but
Yeah.
she's running for governor, not Senate. So my bad. I haven't finished even my first cup of coffee yet. But let's go back to what you said about personal liberties and individual freedoms, because I did read today that again, an adult cannabis use bill has been filed. I think a couple of petitions to get a constitutional amendment in the state of Oklahoma to make adult use legal. And that's all great. And if we did that, that's, that might happen. We saw medical cannabis get passed overwhelmingly. So we'll see. But if it did happen, we'd still have this little problem with the federal government's approach to cannabis. And a lot of people see that as a individual liberty issue and a states' rights issue. How do you look at it?
The federal government has absolutely no authority to be involved with the regulation of cannabis. So they should not be involved in that. That should be handled at the state level. And if states want to go full recreational, like several states originally did, I think Colorado and Washington State were the first ones to go recreational. That's the choice that people would have. I don't foresee that actually passing here in Oklahoma. It might. I mean, people didn't necessarily think medical marijuana would, even though it did, and even though in some regards, our medical marijuana laws are pretty open-ended. But yes, the federal government has absolutely no authority to be involved with that. That is not something that is delegated to them in Article 1, Section 8. So they really do not have the authority to be involved with that. It is an individual freedom thing, like you said.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the primary. And your two opponents, at least that we know about so far, are going to be the incumbent, Senator Lankford, and a pastor from here in Tulsa, Jackson Lawmeyer. And I've already heard him kind of kibitzing about, well, he thinks that you were a poison pill essentially thrown into the race by the Republican, what would you call it, establishment, which I think is a little funny because I don't think you're an establishment type guy. You've always kind of been the loose cannon on deck guy from where I'm sitting, just saying. So, why did you decide to jump in this race instead of backing Lawmeyer, who's essentially saying a lot of the same things you're saying about Lankford with regard to his attitude towards the whole Trump situation?
Well, first of all, I think there's also a lady who has filed the paperwork, or at least
as a Democrat or as a Republican?
As a Republican, I believe also, yes. I forget her name. I think it's like Joanna Farr. There's somebody who's also indicated that she was doing that as well. So I just wanted to mention that as well. But my wife and I had talked and prayed about this for quite some time about where we felt like the next step would be for us, where we could best serve the people of Oklahoma. And so we had already been planning on going this before any of the other candidates announced, including the incumbent. So we had actually been looking at this for quite some time, but just wanted to do it in what we felt was the right timing. Regarding other candidates in this race, it doesn't matter if it is the incumbent or one of the challengers or whoever, they can run their race, but I'm going to run my race based on my record. And that's the main thing that I have that differentiates me, is that I have a proven record of not only what I said I would do, but I've actually followed through with that. You can go back from when I first campaigned and the things that I said that I would run on. I said I would not vote for any tax increases. And even with Republican leadership trying to strong arm and push and essentially force me into voting for tax increases, I had the backbone to stand against that and say, no, I am not voting for a tax increase. We do not need to raise taxes. We need to look at actually properly budgeting things. We need to make cuts. We need to eliminate the special interest credits and deals that are handouts that are being given. So I've proven that I will stand strong. So that's the biggest differentiation between me and any of the other candidates that get in the race. There might be other people that jump in this race as well, but I have the record, the proven record that I can run on to show that I'm the proven fighter. Like you said, I'm not the establishment. I've been fighting the establishment when leadership has caved in and violated constitutional ideals or Republican Party ideals. I've stood strong. So it doesn't matter what their campaign is, what they're going to be campaigning on. I'm running on my record.
Okay, so much for Mr. Lawmeyer. So in other words, you were already planning on doing this. Him getting in was just, well, that's nice, but you're working the plan. And correct. I think that makes sense. So you still had 3 years before your term limited out, right? In the state Senate.
Correct.
And so you must have been eyeing that particular seat, because we do congressional seats every 2 years. You would have had a chance to run for a congressional seat later. You were looking specifically at the US Senate and at Mr. Lankford and thinking, okay, he's vulnerable. Is that fair?
I wouldn't even. I'll do that with a little bit of a caveat. So my wife and I looked at all the different options, because I've had people ask me to run for every position from U.S. Senate to U.S. House, governor, lieutenant governor, corporation commissioner, state superintendent, even county level positions, different things like that. So I had people asking me to run for every position, and my wife and I considered all those. We prayed about all those, and as we prayed, we kept coming back to U.S. Senate. And we were just trying to pray about the right timing. And I know people will say, well, you're just trying to blame this on God. And I know not everybody understands, the prayer process. Different people have different processes for how they pray. So I'm not trying to blame this on anyone or anything. I'm just answering your question is we were praying about US Senate, and we were just trying to pray about the right timing, because eventually, Senator Inhofe just got reelected, but eventually that seat will open up as well. This seat is before us right now. And so we were just praying about the right timing. And like I said, it didn't have anything to do with Senator Lankford, whether he was running for reelection or not. We felt like we were supposed to run for this position in the 2022 election cycle. So that's how we came to our decision.
So how are you going to take on James Lankford? His fundraising is pretty good, and he's got a pretty solid reputation with the Christian community, with the Republican Party. He seems to be fairly well respected by his colleagues. I mean, where do you see his vulnerabilities? Where do you think you can move the needle with the people of Oklahoma?
Well, and again, I have great respect for him. I know Senator Lankford. He's a godly man, a great man. He and I do differ on a few things. There are some votes that I disagree with, some policies, some of those things that I do disagree with. But one of the main things that I've been hearing from a lot of people is that they are dissatisfied, that they want somebody that will actually stand up and fight for them. You had asked before about President Trump, and my connections to him, and that is one thing that he did. Is he was vocal. He actually pushed back on the left. One of my biggest concerns, not just with the incumbent in this race, but with many Republicans as a whole and in leadership, is that often they will make the claim of, well, that's not the hill to die on. That's not the battle that we need to be fighting. And the reason that the left has gained so much ground is because Republicans, those in leadership, those in these incumbent positions, haven't really taken the battle to the left. They've given up on this area and that area and just let them take ground, instead of, first of all, pushing back and trying to stop them from gaining ground, but beyond that, actually going on the offensive and trying to take back some of these hills, some of these areas that we've lost because they haven't been willing to fight. So I feel like that's what people want in this election cycle more than anything. They want somebody that is a fighter, and I've been a proven fighter since I've been in the state capitol. In fact, one of the things that I often hear from people is that I don't just shy away from the battle. I charge straight out, whatever the battle is. If nobody else is taking that battle on, you can rest assured that Nathan Dahm is the one fighting that battle.
So there's the old, chestnut that politics is the art of the possible. And I'm wondering if, I'm wondering if the Republicans are narrowing their focus to the point where they're going to lose the independents, the crossovers, the folks who aren't members of political parties, just want to live their lives and be able to pay the rent and put their kids through college. And a U.S. senator represents all the people of the state, not just the Christians, not just the Republicans, not just the conservatives, all the people of the state. And so when you say, things like, we're going to charge ahead and choose our battles and go for this particular hill, what if you turn around, there's nobody behind you? I mean, I'm wondering if that is going to be an issue for Republicans moving forward, because they seem to be a little bit divided right now. And we all know that the Democrats are hopelessly divided, always have been and always will be, which is why when the Republicans get together, they can win elections. And so I guess my question is the Republican Party going to heal some of these divisions, going to be able to again, start to appeal to some of the folks who are not in the political game and just want to get on with their lives.
So I'll hit on a few things with that. First of all, talk about politics being the art of the possible. There's a famous Michael Jordan quote that I like to paraphrase and kind of make it to fit in politics. But his quote is, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take," right? And so, as far as for in the governmental political realm, you lose 100% of the battles you don't fight. If the other side is already fighting on that hill, you're going to lose that hill. So that's why I use that analogy. So yes, sometimes I do charge at a hill, and I'm the only one that's taking on that battle. Sometimes I've still been victorious in that. Sometimes I've lost. But if you're not willing to fight that battle, you're going to lose it no matter what. So you have to keep that in mind. But then, as far as actually reaching other people, as I've been talking to people across the state, as I've been going to different events, I'm hearing from more and more people that never were politically active, that didn't necessarily really vote. A lot of them voted for the first time with President Trump because they were energized for that, because they saw somebody fighting for them. With a lot of people that I know that have left the Republican Party and either become independents or libertarians here in Oklahoma, they've said because they were just felt disenfranchised by the party apparatus, by the structure, because they see so many Republicans that campaign as campaign conservatives, as constitutionalists, and then get up there and they immediately get swamped by the pressure and they cave in. So I feel like it's people that have actually, those independents, those libertarians, maybe those more swing vote people, want somebody that is actually going to stand up and fight for them. At least that's been my experience from the people that I've been talking with at different events.
Okay, so and we're getting close to running out of time. I'm kind of surprised the Zoom lady hasn't told me I'm out of time yet. So thank you for being patient with me and having this conversation. What, and I'm not even sure how to ask this question. It seems to me like there are two people are living in two different universes right now, one of which involves math and one of which involves, I don't know what. But in your opinion, the outcome of the 2020 presidential election was certified by Congress, was argued about in some 60, 70 courts. They had the whole Arizona audit, blah, 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 all this smoke, nothing. No proof whatsoever of any kind of massive fraud or voter fraud or, voting machines run by dead Venezuelan dictators. My question for you is, who won the 2020 election? And are you ready to say, well, yeah, Joseph R. Biden is actually president of the United States? Because your opponent, Mr. Lawmeyer, doesn't seem to be there.
Well, I believe that President Trump won the 2020 election.
Okay, based on what, Nathan? I'm sorry, based on what?
Okay, constitutionally, if you look at the Electoral College, it is the legislator's responsibility in every state to create the method for choosing the electors. In numerous states throughout the country, those election laws were changed by the executive, by the judiciary, not by the legislature. So on that, for that reasoning alone, the election should not have been certified because it was not done under a constitutional provision.
So give me an example of that. And why argue that after the game is over and everybody's gone home, the stadium's empty, and now we're going to go back and say, oh, well, they shouldn't have done it that way.
Oh, I argued this back then. I argued this when it was taking place. This isn't something new. We have to follow the Constitution, and they did not follow the Constitution. There were several states that made those changes. Some judiciary, some judges that extended the time period for counting ballots after the election in violation of the state law that was passed by the legislature. So there's numerous examples of that whereby it was not followed according to the constitutional provisions. So for that reason alone, I would have voted against certifying the election because they did not follow the constitutional provisions. Now, regarding the actual election and the actual voting, there are some irregularities. There are some concerns. There are things that I feel like need to be addressed. And because there are so many people that have those questions, and this isn't something new, in 2016, Hillary was going around saying the election was stolen. So both sides feel like an election has been stolen. So it would make sense to say, okay, we need to come up with a system to audit this for the surety of everybody's understanding to know that, is our system secure or is it not? And for either side to be saying, no, we shouldn't be doing these audits, we shouldn't be looking into this, we shouldn't have voter ID, we don't need these things, it just raises more questions. And if we want to continue as a republic in this union, we have to have secure elections. So that's why I feel like we do need to look into election integrity, and we need to audit the last election.
Even in the state of Oklahoma?
Yes, even here in
You
Oklahoma.
want to audit the state of Oklahoma where all 77 counties went for Trump? What would
I
be
don't
the
want,
point? What
I
that
don't,
is taxpayer money being spent for what?
I
And
don't want to audit the entire state. We could do it in select areas. I'd be fine with doing an entire state, but we don't need to do it.
how do you select the areas without being, biased? Select
You,
what areas, or just randomly?
no, you select the metro areas. You select several rural counties, so you get a wide range. So you pick 3 or 4 of the urban areas. You pick 3 or 4 of the smaller counties, the rural areas, and then 3 or 4 mid-range areas, and then you actually do an audit on those.
Okay. So I appreciate you being forthright. I think that's going to be an issue for some folks, but others are like, wow, we need to really move on with our lives now. That was then. And what happens next is way more important than what happened then. And, I think there's 2 schools of thought on that. It's going to be interesting to see how all that works out. Do you think that there will be debates? Do you think that you and Mr. Lankford and or Mr. Lawmeyer and or anybody else who gets in the race is going to be willing to get up and do some public debates heading into this primary?
Oh, everybody knows I'm always willing to debate. I know where I stand on my issues and on my principles, so I don't shy away from that. Traditionally, most debates usually don't happen until after candidate filing. Because you never know who actually
Right.
is who is an actual candidate until that point in time, or who's going to actually be on the ballot. So I don't foresee anything anytime soon. It'll most likely be more next spring, but I absolutely look forward to the debates.
I mean, isn't it kind of crazy though that we're talking about this race this far out? I mean, is that normal? I don't think that's normal. And I'm talking about the Senate race, but where people are already talking about the 2024 presidential race, for crying out loud. We're not even done arguing about the last one yet, right?
Yep, the political landscape has definitely changed. It's a very unique environment right now, in elections for sure.
No kidding. All right, Nathan Dahm, state senator, hopefully US senator, he hopes, and in the 2022 elections. Thank you for spending the time. I do appreciate it. Thank Leah for setting this up for me. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I will put a plug in and just say people can visit our website, dahmforsenate.com. That's DAHM, dahmforsenate.com. I'm on all social media platforms. Just search at Nathan Dahm. Definitely appreciate people's vote and support. If they want a proven fighter to continue to defend the Constitution and fight for their rights, I look forward to representing them in Washington, D.C. as their next U.S. Senator.
Senator, thank you very much again. I do appreciate it. And did you get my text I sent you the other day? I don't know if it's the same phone number. I've had it for years, and I didn't know if it was the right one or not.
I didn't see it, so I don't think so.
Then don't worry about it. I'll ping you
Right.
later, and we'll see if we can still hook up. Because
Sure,
I
yeah.
want you to have my number. That's the main thing. I would want to make sure you, Lee, everybody there can get a hold of me. So,
Yep.
all right, brother. Thank you very much. Talk soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bless you. Bye.
Thanks.